Hello everyone, hope you're all having a fantastic day and welcome to the Courageous Frights, a channel where we talk about movies and games, especially those dealing with the horror genre. And today we're going to be talking about the second film in the Netflix horror trilogy Fear Street. Fear Street Part 2, 1978 is a horror slasher film directed by Lee Yanyak and stars Sadie Sink, Emily Rudd, Ryan Simpkins, and Ted Sutherland, with a soundtrack provided by Star-Lord's awesome mixtape. Part 2 picks up almost immediately after Part 1 concludes, and I would strongly advise anyone interested in this film to go watch Part 1 first, since the two are very closely connected. As such, I'd also recommend checking out my review for that film before continuing this review. You can find that video in the description below. At the beginning of Fear Street Part 2, it is still 1994, and we are introduced to C. Berman, a survivor from the 1978 Camp Nightwing massacre incident that was first mentioned in Part 1, who we discover has become a paranoid loner as a result of her experience. Our two leads from Part 1, Dina and Josh, break into her home in a desperate attempt to get her help to save Sam. They eventually convince her to help them by telling them everything she can about the curse and how to stop it. Miss Berman says that she can't help them, but decides to tell them about her own experience with the witch, Sarah Fear, and the curse of Shadyside, which left her emotionally scarred and resulted in the death of her sister. The setting, as mentioned previously, is Camp Nightwing, a summer camp for teenagers from both Shadyside and Sunnyvale in 1978. Given the time period and camp locale, it's not hard to see that the primary influence for this part of the trilogy is likely Friday the 13th, with possible elements from other films of the genre such as Sleepaway Camp. The story is primarily focused on two sisters, Cindy and Ziggy Berman. Cindy, played by Emily Rudd, is a no-nonsense camp counselor who plays by the book and is primarily interested in doing her job to the best of her abilities, so she can pay her way through college, which she sees as an escape from life in the hellish town of Shadyside. Her sister Ziggy, played by Sadie Sink, is her polar opposite in most regards. A rebel, troublemaker, and outcast who is frequently targeted by her peers since she doesn't fit the mold of what society says a high schooler from Shadyside should be. She's often compared to a witch and the target of malicious pranks by the other campers. The other primary characters in the story are Cindy's boyfriend Tommy, played by McCabe Sly, and her childhood friend Alice, Ryan Simpkins, whose friendship has become strained over the years as Cindy became increasingly driven to make a name for herself and get out of Shadyside, while Alice has taken a path of partying, sex, and drugs as a means of coping with the town and life around her. As Cindy's relationship with Alice becomes more and more distant, Ziggy, in contrast, begins to form a close bond with an extremely unlikely individual, another of the counselors named Nick Good, who is the heir apparent to the late sheriff of Shadyside, whom everyone sees as the model citizen. But Nick finds Ziggy's rebellious nature to be a refreshing alternative to his own life, which seems to have been all but determined for him, and also finds that the two actually have a lot of interests in common. We discover that the camp nurse, whose daughter recently massacred her classmates before ending her own life and adding herself to the long list of Shadyside serial killers, is obsessed with the story of the curse, and it isn't long before the tortured soul of Sarah Fear begins possessing people and murder and mayhem ensues, as the sisters and their companions desperately fight for their lives and attempt to find a way to save themselves. While I enjoyed Part 1 1994 for what it was, it does have a number of flaws. However, Part 2 1978 is a superior film in almost every regard. The characters were great in my opinion and fit the setting and tone of the film. Sadie Sink in particular gives an exceptional performance as Ziggy, but all the actors were genuinely likable, and the mythos that was introduced in Part 1 is greatly expanded upon in this installment, and there are a couple of very well crafted plot twists throughout. One in particular came as a pretty big surprise, though if you don't want to be spoiled, I'd suggest you go into this film without reading too much about it. I highly recommend Fear Street Part 2 1978, especially if you're a fan of the slasher genre, as it is a big improvement over the first part and holds up pretty well as a film within the subgenre. However, having said that, I also feel like Part 1 is a necessary prerequisite to this film, and I think skipping it would be a mistake. I'm very interested in seeing how this trilogy concludes, and plan on also doing a review for Fear Street Part 3, 1666 as well. So if you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, and consider subscribing to the Courageous Frights channel for more horror-related content in the future. Also, if you've seen Fear Street Part 2, tell me your thoughts about it in the comments section below, because I'd love to hear your opinion, and as always, thanks for watching.